Welcome to the I Own It podcast with Ben Reinberg.
All right, we're live in Laguna Beach, California at our I Own It studios. Today, we have an incredible guest, special person to me, someone that means a lot. He's one of my mentors. He's a consultant. He's a mind-body expert. He's an author. He's a speaker. The list goes on with this gentleman, and I'm really grateful to have him. Dr. Alok Trivedi, welcome to the show. It's great to see you, and you look spectacular as always, and nice and healthy. I hope everything is good. Looks like you're in Miami right now.
I am. Thank you, Ben. I'm excited to be here for you. I can't wait to help and share what I can to help your listeners.
Great. Well, let's get right into it. So you described earlier in your life that you had it all on paper and you were miserable. Mm-hmm. And how did you find yourself in that situation?
Well, I think you kind of get there. Well, at least for me, my experience of it, right? Like, I think for me, I thought chasing success was the answer. I thought the more things I had, the more money I had, the more, cars I had, the more toys I had, the more enlightened I would be. But I realized it was completely the opposite. And I built my life in the beginning, I think, for kind of what everyone else wanted rather than what I wanted. And what my parents wanted, what society wanted, what culture wanted. And then I realized it's actually not the life that I wanted. And it was the life that everyone else wanted for me. And then I think it takes a lot of courage. And courage is something I talk a lot about. It takes courage to live your life. It takes courage to be able to step up and live your life the way you want to, how you want to, on your premise, on your values. But I think most of society, most people get afraid to and scared to. First, number one, they don't get to know what their values really are, and they stay incongruent to them their entire life, most of the time. And second of all, I don't think that people really understand what life would be like when you can live in your values and structure your life for yourself the way you want, and you get this thing that all entrepreneurs ultimately want to chase, and this ultimate feeling of freedom. That's kind of what happens
when people come into your world. And a lot of people are looking for your help and they're struggling and they come in. What's the biggest blocker that you see in people that come into your sphere and your universe?
Believe it or not, everyone says it's the fear of failure. It's a fear of failure. No, it's not. It's the past successes that blocks it. It's the fear of not succeeding anymore is the biggest, because most people come into this world and it's completely the antithesis of what we've been taught in psychology and neurobiology and personal development is that, keep chasing things, set a goal and then keep achieving it, set a goal and you keep achieving it. But what happens is you eventually get to this point where you hit these goals and then you plateau. And when you plateau, you crash. That's what people don't realize. When you plateau, you crash. The next step from a plateau is a crash. And when people come into my world, it's what I call these root experiences, these events, these moments, these things where they've had these massive dopamine levels of spike, and especially when it comes to money and success and business. And it's not the failing business that prevents them from growing. It's the success that they had in the past that prevents them from continuing that path.
When did you realize that you wanted to become Dr. Rewire? I mean, that was a big moment in your life. Share with everyone like what that journey was like and how did it come about and the kinds of people you focus on helping.
Yeah, thanks for that. I mean, it really is it's been an evolution. That's the best way to say it. It's been an evolution over, all these years. Being Dr. Rewire was kind of never part of the plan. It was just, I wanted to help people, and I want to help people heal themselves, heal their life, and grow their life. And as someone who's an entrepreneur in business and loves entrepreneurship as well, and as a doctor, it was kind of like, what stops people from growing? What stops people from taking the next step? And I selfishly did it for myself first, and then started putting it together for entrepreneurs. And I think for me, it was this whole evolution of just becoming more of who I am. And I think in the beginning, for me, I was trying to be someone else first, dismissing myself as an Indian guy, dismissing myself as a previous chiropractor, dismissing myself of the parts of myself, like of where I came from, my history, Toronto, born and raised in Toronto. And I think sometimes people chase the parts of themselves that they think they have to be versus really just owning the parts of themselves that they are. And it wasn't until truly I started to own who I was, which was a doctor, which was a mind-body doctor, which is a performance expert. Really, I'm a performance doctor. That's what I am. I help people perform better. And I work with entrepreneurs because I am that. right? I am an entrepreneur. That's who I am. That's what I work with. So I work with athletes, CEOs, entrepreneurs to help them grow, whether it be someone who what I call an intrapreneur who's just beginning the journey, or someone like yourself who's just had massive success. We all are human and are all going through this process, but we all have these areas where we get stuck. No matter who you are, where you are, you're stuck somewhere. And that whole feeling of stuck is not a belief, it's not a story, it's really a pattern that you have in your brain. And if you don't heal the pattern and completely rewire it and heal it, it continues to unfold itself throughout your life, and that's where you get stuck. And so I work with those types of people who want more out of life, who but are stuck kind of where they're at.
The last 3 years, your business has grown tremendously and you're able to scale. What'd you learn from it? What came out of it? And what'd you learn from it? And what can you share with everyone that is scaling a business? And because your 3 year trajectory is really incredibly impressive. And I want you to share it with everyone. I think it's really important as people out there, entrepreneurs, are scaling.
Yeah, thanks. And here's the reality of it, right? People see the 3 years, but they didn't see the 20 years before that. They didn't see all the years that it took to of putting the content together, putting the information together when I was speaking in my practice, and just speaking locally and seeing patients, and speaking at the local Rotary Club, and starting the journey there. People didn't see that. And so, and then I became Dr. Rewire, and everyone's like, oh, okay, who's this Dr. Rewire guy? And it's true, right? It's like people only see the end result and kind of where you're going from it. But you know, it took a lot of preparation, and that's really what it comes down to. People say practice makes perfect. That's not true. I don't agree with that at all. It's perfect practice makes perfect. And I spent years upon years upon years working on my craft, my content, my information. One of my mentors, actually, every time I'd say, I want to go do it, I'm ready to go, I'm ready to go, it's to say, you're not ready yet. You're not ready yet. You're not ready. And he'd keep holding me back. And eventually it was like, okay, I gotta go fly. But it was all the years behind the scenes that nobody saw. It was just all the years that were there. And it's kind of like a thoroughbred. One of my mentors before him taught me this principle I call the thoroughbred principle, right? And if I'm not a big horse racing guy, but I understand this one principle about horse racing. He said that a jockey runs a horse race for the first 75% of the race. He holds the reins back. He holds the reins back. He holds the reins back. And then eventually, the last 25, he lets it go. And that horse just takes off. But if you let too much of that energy of the horse out in the beginning, that horse is going to burn out. And I did have that energy. There's no question I was that energy. And many entrepreneurs are that energy. And I was lucky enough I had mentors who saw that in me, who, as much as my anger and dismay were there, held me back and said, no, not yet, not yet, not yet. And then when it was ready to fly, it was ready to fly. So what did I learn in this trajectory? I learned that it takes years. It really does take years. It's not an overnight process inside of it. I learned that when you're confident in yourself, it's not going to matter what people say or people do about it. I learned that scaling a business is different than building a business, two very different elements inside of it. Systems, of course, are the element of it. And when I scaled my practice, that was a whole different animal of scaling. But I really took a lot of those principles, Ben, and I brought them along this journey into this context. So I still think it's like in that capacity. But the biggest thing I learned in this arena, I would say, is the power of relationships, like our relationship and other relationships. How powerful relationships are for your own growth. Because you can't serve the world by yourself. And I think a lot of us think that we get there by ourselves and we'll do it ourselves. You just can't. I don't care how much you want to put into advertising. Partnerships are the way to do it. So good people doing business with good people, I think, is the ultimate lesson that I didn't see was there before.
So the difference between most people out there, like they haven't been through the experience like I have with you, which I'm very grateful and I love it, and doing the work and everything. And explain to everyone, the novice that doesn't know you, like what does rewire mean? What does that mean?
Yeah, most people think that it's kind of like NLP, right? Kind of like it's, and Tony's brilliant. He's been, and he does NLP and he's done forms of NLP and changed it, things like that. It's amazing. It's great stuff. No question about it. I've done Tony's stuff in the past, so it's great. But all of these methodologies, they keep us stuck at a certain point in our brain that is still holding on to what I call the root experience. It hasn't healed it. So when I rewire the brain, I'm literally taking events, moments, experiences in your life and healing them. That they no longer have an energy, no longer a memory, and they actually allow your body to be free of that energy. When you're programming something like an NLP, you're literally programming something, saying, here's your software, and I'm going to put another piece of software on top of that. What I'm doing is I'm just erasing it. Now you get to create what you want to. It's a completely different animal. It's a completely different animal because I'm not just trying to plug in what I want to, because what I want to, honestly, are not the things that really I ultimately want. They're the things that I'm compensating from my past to change. I'll give you an example because what I just said was pretty complex, right? So let's say someone is looking to make some money, and so they want to make $100,000 a year. Fantastic, right? Great. So you make $100,000 a year, and you say, okay, well, you're stuck there. Now I want to make $1 million. Okay, cool. So what you're doing is you just took the past root experience, a past trauma for some people, and said, okay, let me program $1 million on top. But you still haven't healed all the journey in your life here. And so you just bring in more junk on top of more junk and just blinding yourself more. Because that's why my work is centered around not just business, but it's also mind body. You can't heal when you're still holding on to that. That's why people will come into my work, like yourself, Ben. We've talked about this, right? Digestive disturbances, right? People with celiac disease, people with autoimmune conditions, people with cancers, people with diabetes, people with funky healing abnormalities, like you name it. I've seen pretty much everything under the sun, but they didn't come to me because of that. That's where it started. They came to me because they had a business problem, and I helped them with a business problem or a financial problem. I said, hey, by the way, this now is fixed too. Because most people are looking at their life in one segment, versus really when I look at life, it's the whole thing. Just like saying your relationship at home is affecting your business. Your business is affecting your relationship at home. Trying to separate one from the other is just not reality in our lives. So I work on healing it, which is just an acronym that I use called helping energy align with love, and allow that to heal and balance the brain rather than just trying to program new stuff. Then I teach you how to actually put the things that you want inside.
One of the things I want to talk about is health. One of the things we have a lot in common. Health is one of them. And you were the guy who said stop drinking coffee, and you're not a big fan of caffeine. And I stopped when I saw you in Salt Lake City, and I haven't had a cup of coffee since. I know you're drinking mushroom coffee, and you can explain that to me on later.
No, I'm not
on,
drinking mushroom coffee.
Oh, okay. Well, that maybe you're not, but I heard that's another way that you solve that issue if you have a taste for coffee. But caffeine and sugar and alcohol. Explain to everyone how caffeine impacts you, why you don't intake caffeine or at least limited amounts over your career. And I think it's really important that you can share with everyone why you feel that way.
Yeah, caffeine is, it's a poison, believe it or not. Well, not technically, don't qualify me, but in my head, it's a poison, right? Like if you look at poison control and say caffeine, it's not going to be there, but it is a drug. It is a drug. It's the most widely used drug that there is, because what happens is when you take caffeine, it is literally blocking your system from actually functioning the way that it needs to. So we're putting a stimulant into our system that has a half-life of 16 hours. So you take a cup of coffee in the morning, and then it's still in your system at 8 a.m. It's still in your system to almost 10 o'clock at night. But the problem is that we go high in our caffeine, and then we say, 2 o'clock, the spike hits. And that when that drops off to halfway, which is 8 hours, 6 to 8 hours away, you take another cup of coffee. And then people don't sleep at night. And then they don't get to bed. And they're like, their sleep between 10 and 12 and 1 a.m. is dysregulated. And they're like, why am I not recovering as well? Because you had 1 cup of coffee or 2 cups of coffee. People think, it's not that big a deal, but it is. Right? At the same time, when you're not sleeping as well, it also causes your cortisol levels to go up. And when your cortisol levels go up, you cause your sugars to come into the system. And it also is a contributor, not the cause, the contributor to diabetes and people with blood sugar issues. So to me, that was, when I learned all this stuff, it was like, okay. And I wasn't like, I was addicted to caffeine big time. I was having 2, 3, 4 cups a day. Don't get me wrong by any means. Like I used to drink a lot of coffee. And I realized it, but my psychology went to a different place. And it's not where it's fun for people, but this is how I think about things. And Ben, I know you can kind of attest to this as well, as someone who drives in for performance, is if I'm addicted to it and I say that I need it, I don't like that. I don't like that something having that much power over me. If I need something, I got to change that. Like I don't like that. So I realized that. So I basically I said, okay, I'm going to cut coffee out of my life. And I just said one day, bam, here we go. I cut coffee and it was over. It was done. And then the next day I had the most intense, worst migraine of my life, right? It was horrible. And the third day, it was still there. And then I'll never forget it. It was like at 4:30 p.m. All of a sudden, like the headache and everything went away. Bam. The neurotransmitters in the body opened up, the cells opened up, and like the jolt and juice of energy I got was more than I've ever experienced in my life. And I said, this is what natural energy feels like. And I was like, holy crap, I'm never touching caffeine again. And since then, I've never had caffeine. Never had caffeine. I do this Tiavana thing, which is it's not a mushroom coffee. It has zero caffeine. It's not even coffee. It just kind of tastes a little bit like it. I'm like, okay, I can deal with it, but it's not coffee at all. Also, the acidity of coffee is super intense for you and is not healthy for you as well. Sugar, alcohol, all these things are adrenal fatiguers, right? They cause adrenal drain. It's a sympathetic tone on your system. It pulls the energy out of your life, pulls the energy out of your system. You can't perform the best for your business or your life or your family when you're stuck on alcohol, sugars, and caffeine. You just can't. Now, a lot of people will go out and do business and say, "Oh, let me have a drink. Let me have a drink." Fine, I don't have a problem with it. Have a drink. I'm not the alcohol police by any means, but I'm a biohacker at the same level, and I also know that my sleep recovery is not going to be as well. I'm not going to sleep as well. My system is going to take time because alcohol is a poison. And as soon as you put one cup of alcohol or one glass of wine or an alcohol or anything into your system, your body says, stop everything. This is poison. Get it out of my system now. So if you're trying to train and you're trying to build muscle and lose fat and do all this stuff, you're putting stress on your liver and your system, which crashes and doesn't get you the results that you're looking for. People don't realize it. People try and lose weight, but they continue to have a glass of wine every day. And I know that you like wine too, right? Which is fine.
I'm a wine collector, but I agree with you. Ever since I met you, I started paring it back because of this conversation. Recovery to you and I is so important. Mm-hmm. It's a big topic. It's a word. It's something you preach, and I value that. Sleep, you recommend what, 7 to 8 hours of sleep for our audience to get sleep? Because sleep, you feel, is the number one ingredient to health.
100%. I do. Here's what I recommend. I recommend you go to sleep at 10 o'clock. And if you can, if your life you can afford it, which I hope you can, is that you get up when you get up. I'm not into this get up at 4 a.m. and do all this boot camp stuff. Like that's not the way I function, right? You've got to be able to get the full recovery of rest, and our bodies work on a circadian rhythm. So if you go to bed at 10, which is typically when most people start getting tired, or unless they had caffeine or they're up doing something really intense, they push it a little bit later, and then you'll normally wake up around 6. That's the normal cycle. People will get up between 10 and 6. That's the circadian rhythm of our system. The healthier you are, the more you'll fall into that circadian rhythm. The less healthy you are, the less you'll fall into that rhythm. So know that inside of your system. But definitely 7 to 8 hours is a minimum. But get up when your body says it's time to get up.
Breathing is so important. It's the source of energy compared to food.
Yeah.
Can you explain that? Because that's what gives you energy. You're breathing, not food. Explain that to everyone, because that's kind of a different concept for people to get their arms around.
Yeah, most people don't realize it's oxygen. Like your cells. Can I get a little sciencey and geeky? Is your audience?
Yeah, you can geek out as much as you want on this show.
So, literally, what happens is inside of your cell you have this thing called a mitochondria, and this mitochondria produces this thing called ATP, which is energy. Right? Mm-hmm. Our body needs this ATP. Now that's why aerobic exercise. Aerobic means it has oxygen in it versus anaerobic, which is lifting weights. Right? We do both, and they're both needed for sure. But aerobic exercise puts oxygen aerobically into the mitochondria to produce more energy versus anaerobic. Pretty simple, right? We're not going to get into the Krebs cycle and the electron channel. We don't need to go there, but it produces more energy than not. Now, when you are oxygenated, your blood is oxygenated. What happens is you are literally allowing that energy to go to your mitochondria to produce the energy that's needed for your body to sustain. You don't need food as much as people think. You need it to burn and cut calorically, but what you need is oxygen. A friend of mine basically has a saying, and it's great. I think it's very accurate, is that when we decrease the oxygen to our brain, that's when we die. So the most important thing we can do is control our breath. The old yogis used to sit and say that, so goes the mind, so goes the breath, right? And the ideal way to breathe is in and out in a perfect harmony and balance. That's what you're trying to get to. But in our society, we're so stressed out, so nervous, we take short inhale and really fast exhale versus really in and out in a rhythmic pace. So I recommend every morning that you start with a breathing exercise to get the oxygen to the brain and get the body moving. And then out. That's why, I mean, I know you do and I do, we work out in the morning because it's oxygenation, right? That's what the main thing is. It's oxygenation. Now, here's the other interesting thing that if you're trying to lose weight, why is it you're doing aerobic exercise? People don't understand it. When people understand the why, they're like, oh, that makes so much sense. Because when you actually do aerobic exercise, when you breathe, it's the only way fat releases your body. Well, that's not true. Also from your urine and sweat. So when you breathe, but it mostly through your breath. Carbon dioxide is what fat turns into and releases from the breath. So if you're not doing aerobic exercise, you're not getting the oxygen into the system, and you're holding on to fat, and you're not releasing the carbon dioxide inside your system. So it goes hand in hand. So you got to do it. It's a must if you want to live a high performance life, in my opinion.
And if anyone doesn't know, you can watch other videos. Dr. T talks about the 14 items that produce health, and each one is fantastic. I live by all of them. I was living by them, and then when I met him, I started tweaking a little bit, and it's my big thing. I work out in the morning, like you said, and I do his breathing exercise. And I could tell you, I'm more relaxed in business. I'm better at home, and my workouts are better. So definitely his teachings are tremendous, been a huge impact. You say whoever has the highest energy wins the sales game. And I really believe that. And it goes back to the breathing as well. And you're really not a salesman, but you live in a life where you have to sell. It's not in your highest values. I mean, you love to teach. You just incredible teacher. You're really an incredible businessman, even though you don't really say that. I'm going to say that to everyone out in the public here. And how is it that you live in a sales game, but that's not your highest value? How do you tackle that? Because it's constantly surrounding you. That's the revenue generator.
It is. The funny thing is, it's a great question. Thank you for asking it. I'm naturally decent communicator, right? So to me, I'm never selling. I don't ever think I'm really ever selling. I'm just communicating in other people's values, what they can get out of their life, and by the work that I do. And if it works for their life, then great. If not, but I'm just communicating. Right? Most people think sales is like all the scripts and all these things you're supposed to say, and that's not sales at all. From a neurobiological perspective and a psychology perspective, it's simply just finding out what's valuable to someone and finding out what you do and providing value to them with what you do. If they want that value, if they perceive that value, great, they will buy. If they don't, they won't buy. That's it. And if you've produced enough value to somebody, then you grow with it. And it's interesting because, I guess I am in a sales arena, and I am, for a lot of my business in some capacity, the rainmaker in that capacity, right? Which is part of what it is. It is what it is. But I never look at it like that. I'm like, how many people can I serve? How many people am I going to be able to speak to? We were just talking about a group a mastermind. I spoke to them a little while ago, and I said, I look at every person. We don't set numerical goals. We have our numerical goals, but we set people goals, service goals. And every time I do an event or a program or something, I'm thinking, how many people am I going to be able to serve? How many lives am I going to be able to change? How many people am I going to be able to change? So I look at it from that standpoint. So yes, I guess you can call it that I'm playing in the game of sales, but I look at it from the standpoint in service. To me, sales is service. Serve more people. The back end of that, someone can call sales.
You talk about the 3 M's. It's movement, metabolism, and meaning.
Yep.
What is the meaning part?
Yeah. So in our brains, it's designed this way. Whatever meaning we give something, we have what's called a subjective bias. So we create meaning to everything, right? We're meaning creating organisms, right? Like I have a dog, and I don't know if you have a dog, but I have a little dog, and I watch him. It's a great study,
Mm-hmm.
and he doesn't know what anything means. He knows what reactions are. He knows how to feel what other people are feeling. 100%. There's no question about it, right? And but he doesn't know how to make something mean of that. That's in the higher centers of the brain, what's called the neocortex. And in the neocortex, we get to create the meaning of things. Now, everything can have multiple meanings depending on the person, the environment, the experiences, the past, the history, all of that. So our meaning will determine how we move. I'll give you an example of this. Someone who is depressed and they say, you know what, my boyfriend broke up with me, I'm depressed. They're going to sit and say, I'm depressed, I'm sad, I'm miserable. And neurochemically, they're going to release, ACTH, they're going to release cortisol in their system, ACH is going to be released from their system, and their body is going to sit and say, I feel sadness and depression. And they will sit on the couch and not move because of that. So their movement now becomes an effect of their meaning. And their metabolism now slows down because you're engaging a part of the nervous system that's called the parasympathetic and just keeps you sedentary inside that. So metabolism slows down. So people gain weight inside that, right? Real simple example. Versus, you know what? Thank God he broke up with me. I now get the freedom to go hang out with my friends, go hang out with my girls, go hang out, go do what I want to do. I can travel the world and I can go experience life in my own way. That's a different meaning, which is going to mean a different set of movement. They're going to get out of the house. They're going to go do something. And means the metabolism is going to be much more engaged and their body's going to function. So meaning is the cortex, right? Meaning is the way that you think.
Right.
Metabolism is your body. It's the mind body. And movement is your actions into the world.
So to get back to health, we have all these viruses that are running around. Okay. And your teachings are instrumental to help people overcome challenges. What do you recommend to people? Because people have fear out there with all these viruses. They're not living their life. It affects people, affects businesses, families, etc. What advice could you give people on how to deal with all these viruses running around?
Yeah, here's what I can tell you is with the viruses, we're not going to, the virus that shall be unnamed, right?
Right.
The virus that shall remain unnamed.
Right.
It's a respiratory infection. Now, when you become in a state of fear, you activate what's called the sympathetic nervous system, which is your immune system. It's the stress part of your nervous system. And what it does, it releases these things called catecholamines. Now, big technical terms, your listeners may not care, but I'll just say this. Those catecholamines then create a cluster and a cascade in your lungs, which perpetuates the illness that shall not be named. So what's happening is that the fear in itself is perpetuating the illness and the virus versus living in your highest values and knowing who you are, what your identity is, who you are inside of that, and functioning from that space is going to allow you to be more oxygenated. And it's going to allow you to have more movement into your body, which is going to allow you to actually have your immune system functioning at higher levels, and your T cells and your lymphocytes are actually functioning at a higher level. And you actually release more lymphocytes and T cells because when you're doing something that you love, your immune system is at its highest. And it's saying, you know what? We love what we're doing. The immune system is functioning at its highest, and illness doesn't show up as something that's going to slow you down. Whatever is happening, you thrive through it. Now, I had the illness that should not be named. And because I don't know.
And how'd you do with it?
I was great with it.
Good.
I actually had it twice because I was a perfectionist. And the first time I had it, I was like, all right, I got this thing. I was doing a course at home. I did my workouts. I for 7 days, I was at home, or 10 days I was at home. But the first 7 days, I was like, okay, great. I mean, every day I was working. I was just doing my calls just like this. It's the little stuff, I was talking like this, but whatever. I mean, that was the end of that. But I worked out every day. I ate every day. I ate my nutrition the way I eat normally. And I took some extra supplements, some extra vitamin D, and I was good, right? Whereas others who don't live inspired got their rears handed to them, right? And I'm not taking away from anybody who's gone through sadness or challenge with it. I'm not saying that I'm the the ideal person. I'm not saying that by any means, but I do know this is that prevention is far more important, and taking care of yourself is far more important than worrying about the illness. The immune system has the ability, the power, and the aptitude to be able to heal what's presented in front of it. If you've been taking yourself care of yourself before, if you haven't, that's a whole different story. I'll give you an example, right? Ben, I was in Italy. Did I tell you I went to Italy?
No, I heard that through the grapevine. Are
Yeah.
you? How long were you there for? A couple weeks?
I was there for 2 weeks.
Okay.
And I kid you not, I mean, I saw why Italy had such a major challenge with this virus. Because number one, their ventilation was horrible. Like just overall over the country, like air conditioning is shut off and like it's just so the virus stays idle. Number two, though, everybody smokes. Everybody smokes. And it was crazy to me the amount of smokers that were there. Well, no duh. Of course. Upper respiratory illness in a country full of smokers. Sure, that makes sense. Why everyone's sick. So my point in saying this is that when we value our bodies, we value our life. Don't be worried about viruses. Go live your life and serve humanity.
So one of the things we talk about is living in inspiration, not desperation.
Yeah.
And that one foundation helps you deal with viruses, emotions. How important is that to live and how do you find it? Like how do you say, okay, because you just don't snap your fingers, you got to work at it. What's
It
that look
is.
like?
It's a lot of work. To be very transparent, it's a lot of work to put it together. I'll say this: I didn't figure this out because I was smart. I figured this out because I was, you know, I had to for my own survival.
Hmm.
Right? Like I had nothing to eat for days. I was, I went through a brutal divorce, lost everything I had. So like I've been through the journey, and thankfully I was able to figure myself out. But I was there when I was trying to work hard and grind it out and do more of that, and I was getting nowhere. Right? I couldn't sell anything. I couldn't build a business. I couldn't do anything in my life. And I finally like had to figure out what the path, the process was, and why I got stuck. Because I, like most people, did the personal development stuff, did the seminars that everybody does, and I was like, all right, why am I still stuck? Like this is supposed to work, and it wasn't working. That's when I had to figure out and go to my own textbook and say, okay, I'm not an idiot. I got to figure this out, and I put it together because that was to save my own life at first. It really was, and um, so for me, it was that process. But now, once you do it, I mean, it's a journey. But I think you can. I think most people, once they understand their values and their identity, understand what their real mission is for themselves, and they tap into that, then it's constantly refining our past. And to this day, I still do it every day. I still sit down and rewire things in my journey, in my life, and my experiences. It's just as important as pruning. It's like getting a haircut or brushing your teeth. It's like pruning the brain, just making sure it's clean and that. So I do it every day. It's hard. It's hard. Let me say, it's not hard. If you want it, it's very simple. It's very simple to do, but you have to put. It's not going to be an overnight thing. 6 months, 12 months, sure. That's you could live the life that you want. And I can prove this. Anybody who wants to live the life that they want, I don't care where they're at. If they do the work that's in front of them, they will get the life that they love. They will create it. I promise.
I definitely agree with that. You're absolutely right. If you do the work and you work on yourself, you could absolutely achieve what you want to achieve.
Mhm.
A lot of people say, well, Dr. T, how do I find my mission? Right? Because if you explain to someone what you do and everything, they're like, well, how do I do that? Like, so for example, for me is, my highest values are business, health, and personal development. That's who I am. And that's where I gravitate to and I have the most success. But how do you suggest someone can figure that out that doesn't know you?
Yeah, I think I've put together a process and allow me to
Sure.
sound like I'm making a shameless plug. I'm not trying to, but
No, you should make a plug because the value that you provide everyone is tremendous. Go ahead. Absolutely.
like I do this process in my Total Rewire seminar. It's a virtual seminar I do. The next one will probably be in January. We're doing a new seminar I don't know if I told you this. I'm doing a new seminar coming up in October called the Money Rewire
Oh,
inside that. But in Total Rewire, I take people through a process. And this process is designed to extrapolate what your unique specific mission is. And most people write a fantasy of a vision or fantasy of a mission. They think that's their mission, but that's not their unique mission. But when I help people realize and create their unique mission that's designed for them the way they wanted it, and they realize and they see it for themselves, they rewire their brain and they go from what's called the amygdala to the prefrontal cortex. And they see the power of it and they start moving towards that. And they start moving and getting clarity towards that. I have people who were aimless and in desperation, and literally after doing this exercise, I've gone ahead and opened charities and foundations. And I think something like 3,000 kids, 3 to 4,000 kids a day are being impacted by the ripple effect of this mission exercise right now with a lot of my clients and students over the years. So it's unique to every person. So I can't give just a blanket exercise to because it won't work that way. But it's unique when I take you through it. It's totally like you get complete clarity on why you are here. See, because I wanted to answer, Ben, like many of us, right? The 4 questions that Plato and Aristotle used to talk about, right? Who am I? Why am I here? What's the purpose of life? And what's the meaning of life? And I've set my life out to answer those questions for people, and because I wanted it for myself. And I found that neurology and neuroscience open those doors that I can replicate it. Not just an arbitrary path that people would say, sit on a tree and meditate and it just shows up. Like that wasn't it. I wanted a systematic approach that I could do this again and again and again and again. And that's what this work has been able to do.
One of the things I want to talk about, if you get to know Dr. T, he is really impressive how he deals with his employees and staff. And I've been watching it from the outside now, being in the inner circle to see it. And it's really incredible. And one of the things I've learned from you, which was extremely valuable, I want to share with everyone, is expectations versus standards. Mm-hmm. And the way you run your company and the way you teach it is really important. Share with everyone what that means. I think it's a wonderful lesson that you teach.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. Yeah. I mean, most people live their life on a set of expectations that never get met, and they try to chase it and they put extreme stress on themselves. Our new COO, she came from another personal development company that was very strong on these expectations and a hard driving organization. And it's been a culture change and a culture experience for her to realize that, an expectation versus a standard inside of it. Now, a standard is basically, the way I define it is what is the standard based on the metrics of where we're at. So for example, let's say you're making sales and 1 month you're making sales of, X amount, and you hit it. You say, fantastic. Now most sales leaders or more business people say, now great, what can you do to double that? And they'll try and double those numbers. They always play this double game. I like it. Don't get me wrong. There's a certain place of value to have those questions and conversations, but not in management. That's in a creative strategy meeting. Like, how do we double or triple? How do we 10X our business? How do we double our business? Those are great, long, big strategy conversations. But when I look at it, it's like, okay, even my sales team, they'll be like, oh, you know what? I'll double it. I'm like, no. You don't double it. Here's your standard. This is what you do. This is consistent. Just beat that by 10%. Because the standard is what you will actually attain. And then you'll beat it just by a little bit, right? Because if we're constantly living on the highs and lows of expectations and failures, that business isn't going anywhere. It's not going to grow. What you're going to get is a yo-yo and an emotional chaos, turnover, team frustrations, chaos inside the organization, culture falling apart. And I know this because I built that in my last culture versus I said, you know what, I got to change the way that we do things now. And from a leadership perspective, my COO, she's like, you run things in such a different energy where I'm open to allowing people to have feelings. I allow people to have their discussions. And we had there's no hierarchy inside of it. I mean, there's a hierarchy, don't get me wrong. Of course there is, but there's no if you need a space to sit and say, hey, look, I need to actually vent something to you. And I need it not to be held as something against me. I just need to vent this and just talk about it so I can get it off.
Right. You're not above them. You're saying we're equal.
We're equal. We're humans at this point. Then just vent. If you want to come into my office and say, Dr. T, when you made this decision, it really offended me, it pissed me off, and did this. Cool. I love that. Please tell me that. Now let me tell you the rationale of my decision, so why I did what I did. Not that I have to justify it, but if you're in my key levels of management or key levels of organization, I want you to know why I made that decision so that I hope that it was the right decision. And I can't sit and say that. And I tell my team very humbly, We're going to try this. I don't know if it's going to work. We're going to do this together. We're going to learn and grow together. And that's kind of been our approach. So an expectation is though it's very rigid. It's black and white. This is it. If you don't hit this, you're done. A standard is something that you constantly are evolving and growing. A business is meant to evolve. An expectation keeps it rigid and firm and doesn't allow evolution to ever take place.
So that's why you don't believe in goal setting, because goal settings kind of fall into that column of expectations where you know that if you don't hit your goals, it's like you crash.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you're building yourself back up. So that's why
Well,
you don't believe in goals. Is that fair to say?
I don't believe in goals, but I believe in standards.
Okay.
I believe in standards for my organization. Now, I will say this is that I do set goals for myself
Mm-hmm.
in what I want to do. Like, you know, I like right now I have a goal for myself is I want to get down to like 10% body fat. And that's a goal that I'm tweaking around, trying to play with. What's my diet? What's this? I've never been at 10% body fat.
Mm-hmm.
That's something I want to get to. And, you know, being in my 40s, I'm like, that's harder in my 40s than it was when I was 20. Right. And so it's like, all right, so I got to think about things differently. I got to learn differently. I got to act differently. But that's a personal goal I set for myself. And if I never get it and I get down to 12%, I'm not going to be crying. You know what I mean?
Well,
I
you will
know
get
that
it.
the pursuit of that goal, it makes me a better in who I am as it is. So I'm not attached to the outcome of the goal. I'm loving the journey of the attainment of it.
Well, when you do get there, let me know. Share that because I would love to.
I'm not there yet, man. I'm only at
You better
13 and a
unpeel
half.
that onion for me because I'm dying to know how that's going to work.
I've gotten to 13 and a half. That was my best. And then I kind of climbed back up a little bit. So, but I think I've got some new tweaks I'm going to add to it. I'll let you know in about 4 or 5 months.
So when you create your program, one of the coolest things I really admire about you is you wanted to create a legacy for your kids. But then you realize, like, I need to share this with everyone. What I know, this is going to benefit people. When did that happen, and how has that impacted you, knowing that the intent was for the kids, which is great, but then all of a sudden something unveils itself and says, you know what, this is pretty special stuff. I need to share this with more people than just my kids.
It was never intended for people. It
Right.
was never intended for that. Because I had, through my journey, I'd put together all these processes and tools, and like I have over 300, I don't know, there's like almost 400 modules in this thing. But I set this thing up like, how do you handle life? How do you use neurology and rewire the brain to handle anything? Like for my daughter, who's going to college, we're going to college after this, and like, how do you deal with it? With a boy breaks up with you, a kid breaks up with you? How do you deal with that? How do you deal with, if you ever lose money? How do you deal with, a boss that you can't deal with? How do you navigate? So I isolated these things inside of this, and I just created all these modules and all these exercises behind it because, to me, it was always my ultimate goal as a father was not, I don't care necessarily how to feed them, even though I do, but I care about, am I teaching them to think on their own? Ultimately, that's all I ever cared. That to me is fathering. Like after I'm gone, did I teach them to think, to fish for themselves? That to me is being a successful father. My definition of it, not anyone else. It's just mine. And so I put this thing together, and then I had another program I actually had. So the company was selling this other program, and then I was at a seminar one time, and I said I have this other thing, like it's almost 400 modules, and I put it together for my kids. And it's in all 7 areas of your life, and you can master all of your areas of your life. And so that's what I want to leave my kids. And then afterwards, people are like, I want that. I want that. I want to get my hands on that. And I was like, oh. And then like, how can we get that? How can we get that? And then it became something that everyone wanted, and then it became the core offering of the organization, really.
What'd your father teach you to get you to this point? You've been through a lot of experiences.
Mm-hmm.
You have a great relationship, a very special relationship with your father. I met him. What a tremendous gentleman he is.
Thank you.
And I could see where you get your flair from. What did he teach you? What were some of the lessons you take with you and you could share with everyone that would give value?
Man, the one thing that always rings in my head, you could do anything you want to. Like literally again and again and again and again. You could do anything you want to. You have the ability, the talent, the skill to do anything you want to. Go do it. And then he taught me to like have guts, like have courage, have guts, go out and do something, right? As whatever I attain or achieve or create in my life, I'm nothing compared to the steps my father took, right? My father lived in a one bedroom apartment with his family, was feeding his family at the age of 9 and 10 years old, and then traveled across the world from India to a whole place he doesn't know. Like, and he barely spoke English, right? Like, not barely, but like, he wasn't strong in the 70s to come here by himself to create a legacy for his family. Like, I get teary eyed thinking about it, right? Like, I really do. Like, that's courage, right? That's guts. And my dad's not alone. Everyone's got that journey, that story of their parent. But for me,
Mm-hmm.
that's my story of it. But he always taught me that. So I always humbly look to my father and say, and he's lived his life by example. As much as I can sit and sit, like, my dad's 72 years old, he doesn't take any medication. He works out, and like, he trains every day, and I put him on a supplement regimen. I give him his nutrition and what he's to do. But he's like, I want to get more. I want to do more. He's like, he's always striving to do the next thing. And it's admirable to me. Admirable to me. The biggest thing he said is, do whatever you want to do, and then take care of your body. Take care of your body. Take care of your body. And then the third thing I always remember he used to say to me, now I understand it, is keep your mouth shut.
Great advice.
Great
Great
advice.
advice. He's a rock star. That guy he really is. I can't
Yeah.
wait to see him again. So we'll wrap up with three questions we ask everyone. All right, and then I know you got to go to what I call the U, which is a really cool school, great school, and congratulations to your daughter. That's really and congratulations to you. I mean, putting kids through college is definitely an accomplishment, and so
No,
congrats on that.
thank you.
So if I wanted to start out and if I had you on the couch here at the I Own It Studios, you're laying down, I tell you to close your eyes, and I say, Dr. T, what would a current Dr. T tell his 16-year-old self now that you have all this knowledge, which is vast? What would you tell your 16-year-old self?
The same thing my father told me when I was 16 years old. Keep your mouth shut.
Okay, great.
I think it would
All
be
right.
keep your mouth shut and balance your ego.
Okay.
Balance your
Great
ego.
answer.
Mhm.
Great answer. So it's your last day on earth,
Mhm.
unfortunately. But at least we have the vault so we can continue on.
That's right.
And you and I are sitting down at your last meal. What are we eating?
Man, supreme pizza.
Ooh, what are we washing that down with?
If you ask me
Remember,
to,
it's your last day on earth. You could have alcohol, by the way.
yeah,
That's
I mean, I
that's
think
on the table.
tequila. I think it may have to be a tequila, a little vodka 7. Maybe you have to jump in. If it's the last meal, like, I'm probably
Right.
going to go with a buzz. I think, why not? Right?
All right. Great answer.
Yeah.
All right. So in the I Own It studio behind me, you can't see, like, I have a grand piano to my left. And next time you have to come in studio because you would love it here. We have a
Would
drum set and we have 6 electric guitars behind my shoulder here. If you could have any band or musician, deceased, living, we're sitting in the studio, can play us a song, who is it?
Michael Jackson, hands down.
Okay. What's he playing?
Want to be starting something.
Wow. Okay. Cool.
I
So,
had the privilege of seeing Michael Jackson when I was 7 years old
oh
in
wow.
concert.
Oh, that's a treat.
It
That's
was a treat, and
fantastic.
it shaped my it shaped me in so many ways to be able to have that experience. It really did, and that, those it's like that music makes me feel great, just like everyone has it, right? But that, to me, it shaped me in a big way.
So, obviously, I'm a huge supporter of yours. You're a very special part of my life.
Oh, you too, man.
And how do people find you? Obviously, he's Dr. Rewire. You could Google him and everything, but
Yeah.
what's the best efficient way to learn about you, to be able to potentially work with you from all walks of life? You had a lot of value. Give everyone the place to go to find you.
Yeah, I mean, you start with the website, I think, and then I would sit and say, honestly, go look at some of my YouTube videos,
Hmm.
watch some of the TikTok stuff.
Right.
Go find me on social. I'm everywhere on social. We're growing our social platform, but we're out there. And I'm not for everybody. I'll be very direct at the same token, right? I'm not for everybody. I understand that. It took me a long time for me to get that. I'm not for everybody. I'm direct. My motto is cut the bullshit, right? Like, let's cut right through the crap and get to the real result, because I don't have time to waste, and neither do you. So I'm not for everybody in that capacity, but I'm empathetic towards you, but I'll get you the result. And
See,
so
I don't know. I don't necessarily agree with that. I think you are for everyone. I just people don't accept it or are willing to accept it.
I agree.
That's what I see. I disagree respectfully, saying you
Sure.
are for everyone, It's a choice. Either you accept it and realize it and you want to work on yourself, or you don't. I think that's the difference.
I think that's a very wise way to say it, Ben. And I've never thought about it from that perspective, but I agree. It's not me. Like, I know what I do and I'm very good at what I do. I'm the expert at it. I'm really, really good at it. What I don't know, I don't know. And I don't claim to know.
Right.
I don't pretend to know something I don't know. But in this, like, I know this cold and I'm very confident in it. And so, but you're right. Sometimes people don't want that. People don't want to face their own reality. So it's a brilliant way of saying it. Thank you. And yeah, so I'd social those channels and anything,
Great.
Ben, you're doing, man. I'm all in. I'm supporting it 100%. You know, you're an amazing individual. You're just an amazing guy in who you are and what you do and what you provide to people and your companies. And we didn't get a chance to talk much about that in that, but you're just an amazing human being. And I love everything you're doing.
Well, Dr. T, thank you for coming on the show. What a treat. What a pleasure. It's great to see you. You look great. And if you'd like to learn more about the I Own It podcast, click on the lower right-hand button, the subscribe channel on YouTube. Love to have you. Share it with your friends, family, colleagues, so we can add value to you. Feel free to go to benreinberg.com to learn more about me and how I can help you with your growth and your relationships and your business. And then feel free to go to our company website, www.alliancecgc.com, for more information to learn about commercial real estate, as well as to invest in our brand new fund that we just launched, which is really exciting. So thank you, everyone. And Dr. T, what a privilege. Thank you for coming on. It was great seeing you, and good luck to you and your entire family, especially with Ashiana, with her upcoming school that's coming about. It's really exciting. So thanks again.
Thank you, Ben. Appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to the I Own It podcast with Ben Reinberg. To hear our past episodes and connect with Ben, visit benreinberg.com.